business correspondent model has had limited success so far in meeting various stakeholders' expectations. Whether it is the consumer for which the model was designed, or the banks, the regulators, the government, or the business correspondent network managers who have actually invested in this business and taken on it as a business opportunity. However, it is going through an evolutionary journey, and there has been a lot of ups and downs in the last 6 years of this journey. So with the somewhat slow but relentless pace of regulatory and policy amendments, as well as the persistent efforts and endeavors by banks and BCNMs, we believe that financial inclusion is headed in the right direction. However, as the business correspondent model evolves and progressively begins to be recognized as a low-cost alternative channel, it becomes very similar to other banking channels like ATMs, mobile banking or internet banking, and this is something that all the stakeholders need to recognize. It is therefore appropriate to ask what led to the exponential growth of these channels and how the lessons learned can be applied in the context of the business correspondent model. The diverse users of the BC channel, whether it is banks, government departments or corporates, are really wary of extensively using the business correspondent agents for delivery of services or payments for various reasons, and that includes a lack of confidence and trust in their capabilities to deliver. More importantly, urban and rural consumers of BC services want greater convenience, they want greater flexibility, and they want greater choice of financial services as opposed to what they get currently. And if we compare the mainstream and the financially excluded, we find that this dichotomy of what is available to the mainstream consumers versus the poor, that still remains. The question that people tend to ask is that rural consumers, unbanked rural poor who do not even have access to financial services, do they really need interoperable services? Do they need services like their mainstream counterparts or peers? Through MicroSave extensive research, we have actually found that the aspirations and the needs of the poor are very complex. They are actually quite similar to what the mainstream users are looking for. The rural poor, they want banking facilities almost at par with them. So what we realize is that due to lack of adequate integration and interoperability of BC channels, they are unable to have access to many services that they need or aspire to. In rural areas, through our research, we found an overwhelming number of respondents, almost 60% of the sessions where consumers were wanting to use or have access to ATMs. This essentially reflects their need for more convenient, anytime, anywhere access to banking with lesser dependence on the agents who are often not available when rural poor wish to transact. This also reflects the desire to save instead of withdrawing all available surplus funds. In terms of savings, what we found was that 39% of the in 39% of the sessions, respondents mentioned their preference for access to commitment deposit options. These could be in the form of fixed deposits or recurring deposits. And in fact, a very high 83% of the sessions, the respondents exhibited a preference for BC as a channel of saving. So they are not only looking at banking, the branch-based banking as a channel, but BC as a channel for their savings. In fact, a vast majority of poor rural, they would prefer to receive all types of government welfare payments, whether it is under MG Narega or National Pension Scheme or Widow Pension Scheme, student scholarships and so on, via banks but delivered through the BC channel. And we are seeing that there is a greater preference for banking channel even as opposed to post offices. However, the challenge remains that for want of adequate integration and enablement of BCs, government departments are yet not confident on relying on the BC channels, and the consumers in turn are forced to accept much less preferred alternatives than they would like. So the bigger question now for the banks is, why should the banks invest and make interoperability of services available to the poor? through MicroSave analysis, what we have found is that there is a very strong business case for banks and BCNMs in support of greater integration and interoperability. By enabling greater integration of this new channel, the banks and the BCNMs can actually tap into a very significant market opportunity that they do not have, they are missing out right now. We estimate that banks and BC channels are currently able to service less than 50% of the over 650 billion market for domestic remittances alone. By enabling certain interoperability, such as allowing BCNMs and agents to freely acquire interbank remittance transactions, we estimate that this can grow from current 75 billion rupees to more than 140 billion and almost double. Integration of financial inclusion accounts with core banking can enable the market to grow further to over rupees 200 billion. The rural regional banks, the RRBs, were to be fully integrated with CBS, and the migrant remittances were to be enabled through RRBs. The market opportunity could actually grow to over rupees 350 billion. So we believe that there is a significant market opportunity for the banks, and this in turn can be a big opportunity for the BCNMs as well. So it's not just an investment from banks, but a significant opportunity that the banks can look at. We also believe that the underlying usage of technology, better security that can be enabled through this channel, and greater interoperability, all of this can actually enhance the confidence of stakeholders such as the government, who are right now not very willing to allow the government payments to stay in consumer accounts, because they believe that some of the float and would be enjoyed by the banks, and the BCNMs would not actually pay out this to the end beneficiaries. However, if there were greater interoperability, this trust of the government can actually improve, and there would be an opportunity for much more services and funds to flow through this channel. So net interoperability is going to be a great enabler for everyone, for all the stakeholders, and it will give consumers choice, it will give banks and BCNMs greater opportunity, and it will help government have greater trust in the system, and eventually lead to greater volumes of payments and many more services that could be delivered through this channel. Unique Identity Authority of India, which is through its various services such as Aadhaar enabled payment services or Aadhaar payment bridge, is essentially adopted a centralized integrated architecture, and the government is quite keenly exploring that, and it is confident that it would be able to use Aadhaar based services for delivery of welfare payments as well as subsidies. So that is one great example which has started with a well integrated and interoperable architecture, and is set to address many of the underlying challenges which the business correspondent model has been facing so far.